from Wirepoints. Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Thanks for having me back, Kat. Good morning.
Awesome. Great. Good morning. Well, I got to talk about this national campaign. You've got a piece out there this morning on wirepoints.org about the national campaign. Walk me through it. Is it like an abortion rights, a so-called abortion rights campaign? What is he exactly going to be doing with this national campaign? He says that he's going to take the fight to the right-wing extremists nationwide. Uh, Thoughts and walk me through what this national campaign even looks like.
Sure, it's a pretty thin facade. What he has announced is a new nonprofit that's going to go around the country and fight ballot initiatives that are pro-life. He kind of pretends sometimes to make this about abortion, but clearly this is a presidential bid. He's put at the top of his website for this a list of his accomplishments as governor, and emphasizes, as you said, that campaign against what he calls right-wing extremism. So,
Mm,
in fact, this is kind of clever by Pritzker. He can't campaign out there nationally right now because he's promised not to take on Biden in the primary. But this allows him to go effectively do the same and get his name in the running for when, as I think is likely, Biden drops out or gets kicked out or becomes
mm.
incapacitated.
Yeah, well, and the title of this national campaign, it's called Think Big, and they're going to be lobbying this organization. It's a nonprofit organization, I guess, and they're going to be lobbying for ballot initiatives. And I mean, this is just something he can point to say, "Hey, look, I'm getting all of these ballot initiatives done throughout the state on abortion." Um,
Yeah, exactly. It's a 501(c)(4), which is a lobbying organization, so they'll be authorized to lobby directly on these ballot initiatives in other states. And just as he's done in Illinois, he thinks abortion is the big winner in elections, and he's trying to make that a central piece of his platform and his identity. He has said that he wants Illinois to be the most progressive state, that it is the most progressive state, and that he's proud of that, and that's what he's going to bet on. So that's his
mm.
platform.
Yeah, well, and I love the piece that you guys have at wirepoints.org. We're talking with Mark Glennon about Governor JB Pritzker and stoking this division. He announced his national effort to take the fight to right-wing extremists, and we know that he and Mayor Brandon Johnson are probably the worst culprits when it comes to stoking that division. They claim they're opposed to it, and one thing I wanted to point to was almost this teaser speech. It was like a presidential teaser speech that he gave in Florida last summer, and it was so divisive. I'm just going to read a little bit of it here from his speech. He says, "We need to start recognizing that we have an epidemic of young men enamored with white nationalism shooting up our communities with assault weapons." Then he says, "Republicans are simply evil." And he effectively said that they care nothing about human life in all circumstances. And he said, quote, "Give me one example of the Republican Party showing up for life in this country." So your thoughts there about not only he, but also are there examples of Brandon Johnson stoking this division uh, in Illinois and nationwide? Now he's going to be stoking that division between Republicans, Democrats nationwide. Governor J.B. Pritzker is.
Yeah, that speech in Miami didn't get much publicity, but boy, it was extraordinary. It was as vitriolic as anything you'll see in politics, um, and it's hard to imagine anything more divisive than that speech. We have the full text that we found and put it on our site. That's linked in that second article that you talked about. Yeah, Brandon Johnson does the same thing. He has a very nice, smooth way about him. He's not as overt, but if you listen to what he says, it's always things like, well, this is what happens to a black man who comes into office and tries to work through cooperation. They get discriminated against and they aren't given a fair chance. So he made a big deal about criticisms that his administration was slow to present reforms that he had promised. So he took exception to the word slow. He said that's a racial slur. He said that's a microaggression. That's just one example. He does it time in and time out, and uh, I think people are getting tired of this stuff.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Now, I do want to take a look at the money with this national organization. Do we know how much he's contributing to this lobbyist organization where he's going to go around and do all of these different ballot initiatives to try to get pro abortion issues on the ballot and to get all of this on the ballot nationwide? Do we know how much money he's dumping into this and uh, who's helping him with this?
So far, it's only him. That's what he has said. And he has declined to say how much money he is putting into it or whether other contributors will add later on. I'm sure he'll wait and see how it goes. But as we know, he's got the capacity to throw extraordinary dollars at these things. He has spent a total of 330 million on his two gubernatorial races. That comes to basically bought votes for $80,000 per vote. That's what it comes to. And he's worth 3.6 billion, it's estimated. So he's got a lot of money to throw around.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, he's got a lot of money, and I don't know if it's not. I don't even know if it's going to necessarily work. I'm going to be honest with you, Mark, and I think there's this grassroots movement happening where this money isn't going to work, and it's not going to launch him into some sort of successful presidential campaign. Because despite all of that money that he's dumped, I think it was $333 million in the last two governor races that he's been in total. Despite all of that, his numbers out of this latest Emerson poll down his approval rating. What are the numbers there? I mean, he's not even being. I mean, his numbers are down in the state of Illinois. So what is he thinking here, going nationwide with all of this?
Yeah, Emerson poll came out earlier this week. That's a reputable pollster. 41% is his approval rating in Illinois. Typically, if an incumbent is under 50%, that's a sign of trouble. Of course, you had a large majority also in a separate poll saying that they don't want him to run for president. Um, you know, I certainly agree with you about the general election. I don't think he's going to do very well, but I would caution you to remember that the voters in primary elections, and the Democratic National Committee is responsive to them. They are very liberal. That's the hardcore 33% or so of the country that is far left, that has done way, punched way beyond their weight in elections and is really taking control of a bunch of the country. So I do not at all count him out as a real possibility for getting the Democratic nomination. And remember, he's
Mm,
got a lot of cards to put on the table. He's been giving enormous amounts of money to a lot of people around the country. He presents himself well from a progressive perspective. He gives a dynamic speech, and he's very affable and all that stuff. So don't count him out in the Democratic primary. I think.
yeah. Well, Mark, we've got to take a break. I so do appreciate you joining me here. Mark, tell us where we can go to find out or find your articles and to find out more about you.
Thank you. Wirepoints.org. We are a nonprofit. We do research and commentary. We work on facts and data. And I promise you'll find things there that you're not going to read in the mainstream media in Illinois.
Yes. And Mark, I love wirepoints.org and I appreciate you coming on, my friend. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Ken. Take care.
Folks, I mean, an explosive couple of articles done by Wirepoints when it comes to Governor J.B. Pritzker launching this national campaign, really, to take his fight uh, nationwide against the right wing extremists. We're going to break it down a little bit more on the other side. And then I've got to tell you about a George Soros backed deal.